Hey all, Bree from the No Guilt Mom podcast, and I have got a gift for you this holiday season. If you love the No Guilt Mom podcast, and I mean love the No Guilt Mom podcast, then tell us about it. Leave us a review, and you can be entered to win a No Guilt Mom gift card. All you have to do is leave a review, take a screenshot, and then simply go to noguiltmom.com/review to enter our giveaway for a free No Guilt Mom gift card, simply for telling us what you think about the podcast. It is amazing. But don't delay. Get right on this, as we're going to be giving away that No Guilt Mom gift card on December 21st. So get right on over and visit noguiltmom.com/review.
Welcome to the No Guilt Mom podcast. I am your host, Joanne Crown, here with the lovely Brie Tucker.
Why, hello, everybody. How are you?
Brie and I were just talking about our weekends, like the hard weekends.
It's always a hard weekend when you got a teen, especially in my opinion. My daughter as a teen is a little bit more tricky than my son.
It is. It's all about, there's a lot of emotions. I went into this thinking like, oh, we have a really great relationship. And we do. I have a great relationship with my daughter, but the mood swings are intense. And it's weird being a part of them, because when you see like people, like friends who have teenagers, you're never really witness to the mood swings. They only pull that out for you in like personal situations. It's so intense. It feels so personal. I have broken down so many times because of how mean my teen has been to me.
Well, I was telling you, so two things on that. I told you that having a teen daughter has made me call my mom on several occasions and apologize for my behavior as a teen. Because I'm like, I remember doing this to you and I'm so sorry. And half of the time my mom doesn't remember what I'm talking about, which I find kind of funny. And the other half of the time she laughs at me and is like, it's okay. What did Audrey do this week? Because she knows that there's always like a spawn for it.
It's hard too, because it's when you have a teen, and especially with us as parenting coaches and educators, we know developmentally teens are going through a lot. It is their biggest brain change since they were toddlers. Yeah. And we know all this stuff logically. We know they're trying to control their emotions and they're reacting in like unhelpful ways. We know they're learning. And yet when you're on the other side of that behavior, you can't help but take it personally in the moment. Like it hurts you right there.
Yeah.
In the heart.
And I think you were also pointing out too, like how you compare what you see other people doing, which our main mode of that is social media. And you had a post, earlier in, I think it was like April, about how you went on this, you guys did a jog together. You did a marathon.
Yeah.
And how you had this pretty picture on social media, but that there were things behind the scenes. And that's how it is with parenting, but especially with parenting a teen. Like you think you got it. They just go through these phases. You think you got it. They're really great for 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. And then they hit 11 and you hit this bump and you're like, whoa, I thought I had this down. It's normal.
But
it's normal.
And you can't talk about that on social media like you can about potty training or toddler tantrums, because you have a teenager who's seeing everything that you post. And so unless you have a community of people who are very, very open with each other, like we hope we could be for you on this podcast, and that's also what we provide in our Balance VIP group, you never know this is happening. And so you think you're failing as a parent, but you're not.
Yeah. But you're really right on par.
Yeah, you're right on par. You're right where it is.
Well,
yeah.
And it's great that you brought that up about balance, because like in our balance program, like every month we focus on something different to help build skills for us as moms. And sometimes building skills is building awareness, realizing that you're not alone, but then also giving you tools to add to your toolbox on how to work through those challenges. And this month in May, we're finishing up our digital detox, which has been a blast. I personally have learned so much from it because you're the mastermind behind these challenges. Joanne is the mastermind to create a lot of these, and I just kind of like help put the moving parts together. So most people don't know this, but I'm learning things as we're going through it with our balance community, and it has been an amazing month so far here.
Well, I'm like the epitome of a teacher because I just learned it the month before. Yeah. I put it together. It's like, you just have to be one chapter ahead of the textbook.
That's all that matters. And the same thing with parenting. You just have to be one chapter ahead.
That's cutting myself a little short because to go on a little bit of a tangent, which I think is a really, really helpful tangent, is that we are taught as women not to tout our own experience and expertise.
It's bragging and whatever.
It's bragging. And we've seen women vilified for it. Hillary Clinton was vilified for it. So many other women, Taylor Swift is vilified for it. And there was this great opinion piece that I just read about Taylor Swift. And in her concert, there is, which I went to in Glendale, the debut. And I saw this transition she did. She gets up in front and she just opens the concert to tens of thousands of people. And she's like, wow, it's like you've never seen a woman headline to this many people before. And then she flexes a muscle. She is absolutely right. But everybody, when they hear her say that, they're like, oh, that's a little cocky. And then you catch yourself and you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
If a man said that, we would not think he's cocky. We'd be like, good for you, bud.
Right.
Good for you. Look at what you did. And so this opinion piece was this author saying, acknowledging that in herself, and then saying that, come to find out, this author is very, very talented trail runner. And when people ask her how her races went, she's like, oh, I had fun on the trail. No, girl has set records on her trail runs and come in first, but she will not say that to anybody because she's afraid of touting her own accomplishments.
Wow.
So I bring that back.
Yeah.
But what I said about balance, when I'm I'm a chapter ahead of everybody else, I actually have a long line of expertise and have been doing this for many, 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 many years. And I do have a lot to bring to the situation and I do work hard on it. So I say that in the hopes that if you are also very accomplished, which every one of you are, that you start noticing.
Giving yourself that credit.
Giving yourself that credit. Yes.
So with that being said, we are so excited for this interview with Dr. Katie Davis because she fits perfectly into our digital detox that we are dealing with this month.
Yes. And it's all about making our screens not the boss of us. Because screens aren't bad, but I mean, they have some addictive qualities that are purposely designed to be addictive because the app developers want you to stay on forever. And being aware of those, especially when our kids are using screen time, is so helpful. And in this interview, you're going to hear about those things to watch out for in apps so that you can make more informed screen time decisions. So not that all screen time is bad. It's just you're going to be more informed after this interview because Dr. Katie Davis is an associate professor and director of the Digital Youth Lab at the University of Washington. She draws on her expertise in developmental science and design research, as well as her experiences as a parent and an educator to bring clarity to what we know about technology's role in child development. She has a wonderful book that I've read called Technology's Child, if you want to dig into this a little further after the interview. But we hope you enjoy our conversation with Dr. Katie Davis. You want mom life to be easier. That's our goal too. Our mission is to raise more self-sufficient and independent kids, and we're going to have fun doing it. We're going to help you delegate and step back. Each episode will tackle strategies for positive discipline, making our kids more responsible and making our lives better in the process. Welcome to the No Guilt Mom Podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Katie. So excited to have you here because I started reading Technology's Child, your book, and I have so many questions. You hit on things that I have seen as a coach, but I haven't known how to explain to parents about screen time. So I'm so excited to do all this thing about screen time, and let's get into it.
So great to hear.
Yeah, I have no really calm and delicate, graceful segue into this. So,
because it's a burning topic.
Right into it.
It's a burning topic there's always questions about, and we feel that your perspective on this is very, very aligned with ours.
So great to hear.
Yeah.
The thing that
Absolutely.
I saw running through your book is saying how that there's really no blanket screen time recommendations for everybody, that it depends on the child, and it's the child that needs to be considered. Can you talk a little bit more on that?
Absolutely. So yes, and in many ways, I would say that the term screen time is not particularly helpful because it doesn't really capture the nuance of what's going on. Because just starting with the technologies themselves, there's a lot of different things you can do with any given screen, whether it's a mobile phone or a computer or a tablet. So in my book, I'm really talking about focusing in on, well, what is the different technology? But then, as you say, who's the child who's interacting with it, and what's their personality like? Where are they developmentally? What sort of context are they experiencing in their lives at home and at school and other contexts? So really, we need to be looking at the technology and how it's been designed and the kinds of experiences that are possible and not possible with the technology. We need to look at the individual child, and we need to look at the context. And that's both the immediate context, but then just the surrounding societal context and all the messages that are coming at families about technology.
Hey, Aubrey here, and I wanted to share one of my favorite gifts to give during the holiday season, a Storyworth book. It is the most amazing gift ever. Storyworth is an online service that lets you create a special and unique gift of someone's story. I've given Storyworth books to both of my parents, and it has been their favorite gift, hands down. And did I mention it is so easy? Storyworth emailed my parents questions every week that I handpicked from their massive list of questions that they have. All my parents had to do was open their email and answer them. That easy. I asked my dad questions like, did you have any rules that you set for yourself as a parent, which you immediately broke? And he did. I even asked both of my parents, are you more like your mom or your dad? And they shared a lot of really amazing qualities that I didn't know about my grandparents at the time. Then at the end of the year, Storyworth compiles all of their answers, puts them into this gorgeous book that covers everything. My parents love showing us their books, and I personally love getting a chance to read them. With Storyworth, I am giving those I love a thoughtful and personal gift from the heart that preserves their memories and stories for years to come. Go to storyworth.com/NGM and save $10 on your first purchase. That's storyworth.com/NGM to save $10 on your first purchase.
This message is sponsored by Greenlight. It is so hard to raise kids who know how to manage money. Bree, right now, my kids are all about earning money for presents. My daughter wants to get presents for all of her friends, and my son is doing a Secret Santa with his friends.
Oh, I hear you. And if you're looking to raise kids that are financially responsible, we have got a lifesaver recommendation for you that you need to check out. It is Greenlight. Greenlight is a debit card and money app made for families that gives kids and teens an easy and fun way to gain financial literacy, all while giving parents peace of mind.
You can send instant money transfers, automate allowance, and even keep an eye on kids' spending with real-time notifications. Meanwhile, your kids can begin their journey towards financial autonomy by learning how to save, invest, and spend wisely.
So sign up for Greenlight today and get your first month free when you go to greenlight.com/NGM.
That's greenlight.com/NGM to try Greenlight for free. Greenlight.com/NGM. So the technology, the child, and the context. Let's start with that technology component, because we've all heard that apps do certain things to draw you in. And I've really loved how you broke it down in your book, specifically what to look for in young children's apps. Bree, this is going to blow your mind, by the way, what to look for in young children's apps. So what should parents look for when their child, their preschooler or their young grade schooler, is engaging with an app?
Absolutely. So the term to think about here is dark patterns, and you're on the lookout for dark patterns in the design of whatever app it is that your child's engaged in. And really dark patterns, it sounds ominous, but all it is just particular designs that developers have chosen to incorporate into their app in order to hold our attention and keep us engaged on the platform. And so in the context of children's tech use, dark patterns can be things like virtual characters in a game who cry if you exit out of them, virtual rewards. I mean, yes.
Emotional manipulation at its finest.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You know, countdown clocks, hidden ads, even just the way you navigate in a platform. If it's difficult to find your way home, that's a dark pattern because it's hard to exit. So there are all sorts of tricks that developers use to keep us engaged and to keep our children engaged. And when you think about little kids and the kinds of skills that are really important for them to develop, one of them is the ability to regulate their emotions and their behavior. Mm-hmm. And that constellation of skills is called executive function skills. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard to develop those kinds of skills in the context of technologies that have a lot of these dark patterns. And so what I'm saying in the book is that beware of these dark patterns, but it's not the case that all technologies have dark patterns and not all to the same degree. Mm-hmm. And I would say that a few games here and there that have these dark patterns in them is not going to be detrimental, but it can help you understand why it's so difficult for your child to put a game down or to exit out of an autoplay on YouTube or Netflix. And I think that understanding really helps a lot. And it takes off some of the burden of saying, oh, why is my kid so addicted? Well, it's not necessarily that they're addicted. It's just that this has been designed to hold their attention. Yeah. And so it's absolutely understandable that they're having a hard time putting it down.
Okay. I don't feel so bad now about how I can't stop binging on Netflix. It's making me feel a little bit better.
It's absolutely applies to adults as well. It's designed that way.
Yeah. Here's the show you should watch next, particularly picked out for you.
But that's a good point, right? Because as an adult, if we're struggling with this, it's a no-brainer that, of course, our child that doesn't have the same level of skills that we have and the same self-regulation and or willpower. I don't want to say willpower necessarily, but along those lines, they don't have that. How are they going to be able to maneuver through it? But I'm still reeling over the characters that cry when my kid cries. That's just wrong.
When I read that, I thought of you, Brie. I'm like, what?
You saw my face in your head before I even made it.
Yeah. But you touched on something too, Katie, with a lot of things we hear from parents is that their kids become quote unquote monsters after they use the screen time. And I think being aware of these dark patterns, it's not so much that their kids just become monsters after this blanket use of screen time. It's something in the app's design that is making it very, very hard for the child to put it down. And I think that is such a big aha.
Yes. And usually that sort of monster behavior is coming from the fact that they've just experienced a length of time where their attention has been guided for them. Mm-hmm. And so it's easy when you come off of that to feel a bit of dysregulation in your behavior. And that's sort of not knowing how to regain control of your own behavior. And it can take a little while. And so that's why, in this case, the idea of screen time can be somewhat useful because if you're engaged in that kind of activity for a long period of time, it's just going to be that much harder to regain your own self-control and control over your attention.
Yeah, definitely. In regards to attention, a lot of the things that parents look out for in apps they're educational. And something that you mentioned is that when kids are engaging in apps, it should be like a self-directed learning experience. And that really, you changed my definition of this because you were talking about your experience with your son in the app. And is it Dynamic Alphabet or?
Oh, right. That was Endless Alphabet.
Alphabet, which you were like, oh my gosh, this app is so cool. This will be like a great experience versus what happened when using a book. Can you tell that and what you saw in that?
Yes. So I, like any other parent, I'm on the lookout for educational apps for my son. And especially I was writing this book when Oliver was little, 3, 4, and 5. It took me a while to write it because of the pandemic. And he was engaged in a lot of different kinds of apps and a lot of literacy apps. And one of them is Endless Alphabet. And it really is, it's a very open-ended app. And that's one of the qualities that I urge parents to look for is this app open-ended and is it self-paced? Can your child actually direct what they're doing in the app, or are they being directed by the design of the app? So that's what I mean by self-directed. And it's one of the key qualities of a developmentally supportive tech experience. And so on the face of it, Endless Alphabet absolutely checks all the boxes. However, you never know how a particular kid is going to end up playing with a particular app. And Oliver was totally fascinated by the animated noises that these letters make when you move them. So you're supposed to move these letters onto an outline of the letter in order to create a word. One of his favorite words was odor. I'm not sure exactly why, but that just stands out to me.
Yeah.
And scrumptious, that he once said, "My breakfast is scrumptious, Mummy." So that was good. But, I think for the first little while of him playing, at least I would say several months, he was just totally fascinated and having so much fun with these little wobbly letters. And I'm not so sure how much he was actually getting out of it in terms of learning that those letters actually make a sound and those sounds combine together to form a word. However, he did start to get it after several months. And as I think when he was developmentally ready, more like age 4.5, when he was ready, the key though, and I contrast in the book that experience to me reading with him, just a board book, Richard Scarry's, I think Busy Town is the one I compared it to. So if we compare Oliver's experience with the Endless Alphabet app to, say, our experience together reading Richard Scarry's Busy Town, it's a very different experience. And it's not just because one is digital and one is analog. But when we're sitting down together and reading Richard Scarry's Busy Town, I can really make that experience a very personal one and tie what we're looking at on the page to aspects of Oliver's experience and his life and the things I know that he's interested in. And so that concept is called social contingency, where caregivers and really any adult in a child's life, the reason why they are so good at supporting children's development is because they can make those personal connections. And that's something that an interactive app, although it is interactive, it doesn't really know who it's interacting with, and it doesn't know the backstory of that child. And so that can be a little bit limiting. It doesn't mean that kids aren't getting anything out of it, because there's certainly educational dimensions to many apps. However, beware that even though they say that they're very educational, there's virtually no peer-reviewed research supporting those educational claims.
They have nothing.
Take it with
they have nothing.
No, they don't. So take it with a grain of salt.
We're hitting that time of year where my brain gets so overloaded in December that I look for anything to make life easier. And I have to say, Brie, that Green Chef is one of those services.
Yes, Green Chef is there to take away the dreaded, oh my goodness, what are we going to eat for dinner tonight? You can eat clean all holiday long with over 80 weekly meal options each week, featuring things like quick and easy, protein-packed, calorie-smart, or my personal favorite, the keto options.
And you don't have to lose track of healthy eating habits during the holidays, because every Green Chef customer gets a free session with one of their registered dietitians who can walk you through how to make clean eating work for you, which is very cool.
And I have to say that I have been loving their recipes lately. They put things together I have never thought of. This week, we're trying the lemon basil caper pork with sauteed cauliflower, bell peppers, almonds, and feta cheese, my favorite. Their recipes make it so easy to support my wellness goals without skipping on flavor.
For Green Chef's best deal of the year, get $250 off with code NGM250 at greenchef.com/NGM250. That's greenchef.com/NGM250. And don't forget to use that code NGM250 to get $250 off.
Green Chef, the #1 meal kit for eating well.
My son is playing a game right now on his computer where he's a thief and the cops are after him. So I'm so excited about this new app, Give As We Grow, where instead of being the quote unquote bad guys, kids are practicing giving back.
That is so cool, Joanne. I really wish that there was something like this when my kids were younger that got them excited about giving back to others and helped them build a better understanding of what it really means to volunteer.
Give As We Grow is the first of its kind free educational mobile app for children ages 8 to 11 that teaches kids via fun, service-focused minigame quests to tap into their unique talents and interests to help others.
And did you know that studies show that there is a biological connection between generosity and happiness, and that volunteering improves people's physical and mental health? I mean, kids who volunteer typically do better in school and are less likely to engage in risky behaviors. And that is something that I think we all want for our kids.
Ready to spark a new movement in generosity? Find and download Give As We Grow for free in the App Store for Android and iOS. And for resources for the whole family, visit giveaswegrow.org.
Yeah. Another thing I found fascinating is it's going into this perception of what us parents find, what we see, and we're like, oh my gosh, that is such a good experience, versus what is actually supportive of the kids' development. And I think you did such a good job explaining it when you talked about playgrounds. And how you thought the Berlin playground versus the US playground and what really mattered. Can you tell us your story about that?
Absolutely. So for the first year and a half of Oliver's life, we lived in Seattle. And then we moved for my sabbatical from the University of Washington to Berlin. And so we were there for 4 years, and we had the opportunity to experience the amazingly gorgeous playgrounds that are just everywhere. And, they have different themes. So the one that was right outside of our apartment building had a big pirate ship and a big wooden pirate chest that kids could crawl into. There was one.
Cool.
It was amazing. There was one that was a giant dragon structure, and it was painted green with a bright orange or red tongue. There was one that was even designed after a post office. You could just find any sort of playground. But the key material that you're going to see at a Berlin playground is wood. And the more hand chiseled, worn looking, the better. And that really contrasts with what you see in the typical North American playground, which is usually bright plastic contraptions that are pretty much standard, from what I can tell, across the US. And as parents, or just as humans, we look at and may compare these playgrounds and say, well, the one in Berlin must be so much better. It's so much more beautiful. And that's what we as humans tend to do. We associate beauty with goodness. But what I'm arguing and using that example to do, although it has nothing to do with technology, is to really kind of interrogate what are the assumptions behind that. And actually, the aesthetics of a play experience don't have a lot to do with the actual quality of the play experience. And what we really need to do is look at how it's been designed. And so if you're climbing up and sliding down a slide that is this part of a beautiful wooden playground, and you're doing the same on a plastic playground, probably that experience is going to be pretty similar. What we really need to focus on is how that play experience has been designed. And so I use that example of the playgrounds to bring that into the technology space and say, you know what? We have a lot of preconceptions about technology. And in our society, technology often, although we are often so excited about the latest gadget, when it comes to kids, there's a lot of fear. And there's just this inherent assumption that screen time is a bad thing. And what I'm arguing is that, well, some screen time certainly is. And, screen time that is full of dark patterns. Yes, beware of that. But you really have to dig a little bit deeper and look at the design and look at what does that allow the child to do? Can they exert their own agency and can they direct their own play experience? Because really the best kind of play and the best kind of learning, because there's a lot of learning that's going on in the play experience, is one that's self-directed and open-ended. And so that's what you're really looking for when you are trying to judge any one app or any one digital experience.
The apps that have you go along a certain path where you're earning prizes and when you're getting rewards, those aren't quite as good in a developmental sense as the apps that allow you to move things around. I immediately thought of this app that my daughter loves called Play Home. And she's 14 and she downloads it to her phone because it's relaxing for her. And it's just made of a collection of what you term in the book loose parts, where you can move things around, you can have them interact with each other. It's like creating an imaginary landscape for kids, which is so interesting, seeing how that is more beneficial in a play sense.
Yes, absolutely. So I use this idea of loose parts, which comes from a sculpture professor named Simon Nicholson. And he argued, and later research has supported, that loose parts is what you're really looking for when it comes to children's play, whether it's digital or analog. And if you think about just things that you might encounter outside, sticks or sand or pebbles, that stick could be a sword, it could be a horse that you ride, it could be part of a house that you build. There are so many things that loose parts can be depending on a child's imagination. And loose parts really encourage children to use their imagination. And so this is what ideally you're trying to look for when it comes to digital experiences. How, again, it comes to self-pacing and self-direction. Are there parts, digital parts in this experience that my child can actually manipulate and create something new? A great example, I think, would be in Minecraft in the creator mode, where you can actually build worlds. There are a lot of loose parts. In VR, Oculus has a great painting app in VR where, you can paint in 3D, and it's just incredible what you can do. So there are loose parts to be found in digital form. I argue, though, that sometimes they may be a little bit harder to find, again, because every digital experience has been very specifically programmed by the developer, and they make decisions about what's possible and what's not possible to do. And that can sometimes be a little bit limiting.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because your description of loose parts reminded me of this experience that Brie and I both had at a painting studio, and having things being self-directed versus led. Our friend Jen, we went to like a painting night, and Brie's like, okay, I remember this.
I was like, what is she going to talk about with this one? But
So we went to a painting night with a group of women, and it was one of those things where the instructor's in the front of the room teaching us how to do this painting. And Jen comes in and she brings her own big brush, and she's like, you know what? Forget this instructor. I am painting my own canvas.
I love it.
And I am not following the steps whatsoever. And it just made me think of this idea of not being directed in an activity, like the benefits of not being directed versus the creativity allowed.
Yes. But you know what? That example is such a great one, because some people actually, in order to get started, they do benefit from a little bit of guidance. And I've actually been to one of those painting nights. They're really fun. And I'm an abysmal artist. And I actually really appreciated having a little bit of guidance to know where to start.
Same here. I do not have that artistic, that just pull it out of anywhere creativity that our friend Jen has. Yes. I'm with you. Like, show me some direction. I like having wiggle room within the direction, but
sure.
Give me a path.
And then, it comes back to all children are individual. And so there really is no one size fits all. And so some kids are going to need a little bit more structure. And also there's a whole kind of play called guided play, where adults and maybe older children are actually providing specific guidance. And that is very important for development. But what I'm saying is that you also want to leave space for the more self-directed experiences, because there's so much good development that's happening there, where kids are developing their own resilience and even just emotion regulation. If they're playing with other kids, they're developing their moral sensibility. And it's just really an important piece of play that you want to keep front and center as a parent.
Yeah, definitely. And you described this concept of being a good enough digital parent.
Yes.
And I think that's so important for people to hear. Can you describe that?
Yes. Well, I became a parent 6 years ago, and as you, I'm sure, also have this experience, there's a lot of pressure associated with being a parent. And, in today's landscape, they even have a name for it, intensive parenting. There's so many expectations on parents today to just provide their kids with every enriching activity possible, whether that's digital or analog, and just be on top of everything. And by the way, have a full career as well.
Yeah.
And so it can be exhausting. And
moms in particular, dads seem to get off the hook a bit. Yeah.
Unfortunately, a little too often.
Yes.
Especially during the pandemic. And so I think that with all that pressure comes a lot of guilt. And this absolutely, you can see in the digital realm, there's a lot of judgment among parents, but also just in the media messages we get around giving ourselves or giving our children too much screen time. That's considered a really bad thing. There's a ton of judgment there. And so I introduced this concept of the good enough digital parent. And I'm actually referencing a concept that comes from the mid 20th century. It was a well-known pediatrician called Donald Winnicott. And he wrote about this idea of the good enough mother. Because, we were back in the mid 20th century. I guess dads were only ever expected to be good enough.
Yeah, they've always been expected just to be good enough.
Right.
If they're not like dumpster, like they're not drunk on the couch, they're good. They're
good. Yeah.
I keep hearing in my head, I have to throw this out there. I'm so sorry. There's this woman that I've seen on TikTok and on Instagram that has a song she wrote about all the things that the mom does. And the main chorus line is like, and then the dad shows up and he's at the park with the wife and somebody walks up to dad and is like, wow, you're such a good dad.
job. Yeah. Oh
Just
my God.
because he's there.
Spending time with the kids. Good job.
Such a good dad. But mom, you didn't do
Just
15 gazillion things.
Yeah.
No, that is so true. I can relate to that. Absolutely. When my son was little, my stepfather got that as the grandfather who was so involved. Just everyone was so impressed. Wow, good job. And my mother, as the grandmother, was like, well, what about me? I'm also involved. But
Yeah.
I guess that was just expected. So this idea of the good enough mother, I update it to the good enough parent in this 21st century context. And then basically the idea associated with this is that Winnicott was arguing that if we're always there for our children to solve any problem that they have, or if they're having an interpersonal challenge to figure it out for them, or if they're bored to give them a next activity to get them on board. If we're always there like that, there's no space for kids to develop their own resilience. And so it actually does a disservice to our children if we are just 100% responsive 100% of the time. So I move that idea into the digital realm and I say, you know what, parents, we're not going to be perfect at this. As a researcher, I know that there is no research that shows this is the right way to do it and this is the wrong way to do it. We are tinkering and we're testing things out, we're observing, and we're adjusting as we go. And importantly, as long as we're making that effort and we're really paying attention to our kids and how they respond, that's kind of good enough. And that's actually pretty great. And you can learn a lot that way and be a really good parent, digitally speaking, in that sense. And then there's another really important piece of the good enough digital parent, because we often, I think, our guilt doesn't just come from the way we let our kids use technology, but often we feel guilty for our own technology use, especially around our kids. And so here, again, I want parents to give themselves a bit of a break because, again, these devices have been designed explicitly, specifically to keep us engaged. So it's not some personal failing on our part, but actually us responding to the design and the purpose of these platforms and apps. And so I want parents to give themselves a bit of a break, but also not just throw your hands up and say, well, I'm just going to let the floodgates open and use my technology whenever I want, but try and use, if you find yourself slipping up, use that as a teachable moment for little kids. I do that a lot with Oliver. If I find my eyes glancing over to my phone, I'll say, oh, you know what? I'm distracted. Let me put that away. And then we can focus on what we were doing. And then for older kids, into the teen years, I think it can be a really great entryway into a connection that parents can make with their kids, saying, you know what? If you're struggling, I'm also struggling. And maybe we can have a conversation around that, a non-judgmental conversation. And I think that can be really powerful as well.
Yeah, it's funny. We both have teenagers and I've gotten into these conversations with my daughter, and sometimes it could be very, very hard to start because she will be initially resistant to it. And it just helps to pose the questions. I'll be like, do you ever feel like you can't stop using that? And she'll be like, no. And then later on, she'll mention something and I'm like, oh, got in. Okay, cool.
Yes. And I think the key is to just wait, be patient, and keep asking. And as much as possible to suspend judgment and just enter into those kinds of conversations with an open mind, with genuine curiosity.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Katie, for joining us. I highly recommend everybody get your book, The Technology's Child, which is digital media's role in the ages and stages of growing up. It is fascinating.
And
I'm
it's
still in
super
the middle of it.
helpful.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, that's the other thing. Like, if you are sweating it, it gives us the ability to have like a little bit of a lighter feeling of that guilt, plus how to actually work with it.
Yeah.
Because there isn't a
Yes.
lot out there that tells us what to do other than just you're ruining your kid by letting them have screens.
Pretty
Right.
much.
Absolutely. And I
Pretty
also
much.
have an accompanied newsletter, weekly newsletter, if your listeners are interested in, with tips and ideas from the book. And you can sign up for that at katiedavisresearch.com.
Very cool.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you
Thank
later.
you so much.
Well, I learned so much from Dr. Davis's book, as well as just talking with her about all these things that developers put into the apps. And like, I loved your expression too, Bree. I was waiting that whole interview for you to have the reaction to the crying child in the app.
That is so mean,
isn't it?
Yes, and you knew that would get me because my passion is early childhood. Those kids are learning about emotions. Their brain is developing constantly, and to think that some mean old app developers are taking that empathy that they're building, that emotional stability, and it just
manipulating
using it in a manipulative way. It's so mean.
It is so
it's like
mean.
kicking a puppy.
So mean.
It's like kicking a puppy in my mind.
Yeah, it is uncalled for.
It is. It is uncalled for. But you know what?
Shame. I know your name, app developers.
I know, right? But I loved what Dr. Katie brought forth, because I'm calling her Dr. Katie. I hope it's okay, Dr. Katie, Dr. Davis. Dr. Katie is what I've nicknamed you in my head. But I love the fact that a big portion of her platform is that, listen, screen-free parenting is just not likely for most people. So quit beating yourself up over it and just learn what you need to learn.
And side note, here I go. I'm climbing up on my horse, on my platform. Here I go. Side note, don't judge other people when their kids are on screens.
Oh,
okay, here
I know.
Go down off my soapbox. Okay.
I know. That's a hard one. I find myself every once in a while being a little bit judgy of somebody else for whatever the reason. It might be parenting, and it might be my neighbor, double parking on the street next to me, whatever. And I'll sit there and I'll be like, wait a minute, I don't know what's going on. And I try to run through other scenarios in my head, so that way I can at least be thoughtful the fact that I have probably been there. And what did I probably look like to other people too in the moment, trying to break that judgment. I want to say like feeling that, like that judgment
cycle. Oh yeah.
Thing
I do it too.
It's like a big dark cloud that just is all of us.
If I go into a restaurant and I see kids on iPads instead of talking at the table with their kids, immediately I will judge. But again, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if the parents had just had a really bad day and they just need a little bit of quiet at that table and enjoy a nice meal without their kids complaining that there's nothing on the menu for them to eat. I get that. I can empathize with that.
Or even, right? Or even that this is like a big reward for their kid. Their kid did something amazing. And so the agreement was that they get to do X, Y, Z. Like, we only get to see a glimpse of what's going on. So the best we can do is be supportive and just have faith that we are all trying to do our best.
Oh, yeah. And it's funny, the reasons people turn to devices too, because I brought this up with my daughter that I felt ignored when she went for her phone. And she's so insightful. She said, I just needed the time to calm down and I didn't want to be mean. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I see this. You're using it to regulate it so you don't say something that you have to apologize for later. Okay, I get it.
You're like, in that case, okay. Because again, our kids are growing up in a different world than we did. And we use technology a different way than they do. I was shocked when my son started high school 2 years ago. And the first week of school, he's like, Mom, I need my cell phone at school. And by the way, I hadn't taken it from him, but I did question him and why he was taking it at school. He's like, I need to, because we actually have to use it in class. Like, our teachers, before we get our laptops, there are things that we have to log on to for the internet, and they know they don't have enough devices for everybody. So they're always like, hey, if you got a phone, pull it out. If you don't, then I'll give you one of our 3 laptops we have or something. So again, I guess what I'm just trying to point out is that they have a different life, a whole different way of doing things than we do.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, we hope you enjoyed our interview with Dr. Katie Davis, and go check out Technology's Child for some more really great action steps that you can take. Especially, we didn't even get into the discussion with teenagers and social media, and she has that all in her book. So remember, the best mom is a happy mom. Take care of you, and we'll talk to you later.
Are you looking for something to listen to with your whole family? Then check out 6 Minutes, produced and created by Gen Z Media. With over 200 twisty, cliffhanger-filled episodes, 6 Minutes tells the story of 11-year-old Holiday, who is pulled from the icy waters with no memory of who she is or where she came from.
3 years ago, Brinley Pasternak helped the Anders family uncover the truth about Holiday's past. Now she'll need them to help her find the truth about hers. In 6 Minutes Out of Time, the long-awaited sequel, Cyrus Anders is found unconscious near the mysterious Elixir Academy in Florida, and Brinley learns the school may have a shocking connection to her missing mother.
Dive in now and get the most downloaded family audio adventure in history. Follow 6 Minutes wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen early and ad-free with the GZM family subscription.